just couldn't let me go, could you? This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. You won't kill me out of some misplaced sense of self-righteousness. And I won't kill you because you're just too much fun. I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Tiana.
And this is Next Door Villain,
a podcast where we uncover the villains to discover their humanity. Hello!
Hey!
Welcome to Next Door Villain podcast, where we discuss fictional villains. We're excited to have you here today.
Yeah, this episode is about probably our most requested villain to date. People have been writing to us and asking us to do this villain for quite some time, and so we're very excited to finally be able to put this out there.
Yes, you all have been sending the tweets, sending the messages. Now we're finally delivering. We're so glad we're finally doing it. We're popping the Joker cherry.
That was really uncomfortable phrasing for me for some reason.
Sorry. But we're doing a very high-profile villain that people seem to love or hate, but mostly love a lot. And so we'll get into kind of some of those reasonings why people like the Joker so much. I can't really think of another villain that really reaches the same type of villainy, reaches an evilness that's very unique.
Yeah, and he's a villain that really everybody knows. I think whether or not you've seen The Dark Knight or read the comic books, everybody has some knowledge of the Joker. And one of the reasons we're talking about him right now is, of course, because of the movie that just came out, Joker, which is a look at the Joker's backstory played by Joaquin Phoenix. And that's also one of the reasons why the Joker has become such an iconic character, is because he's had some pretty brilliant portrayals in movies. First in the Dark Knight when he was played by Heath Ledger, and now by Joaquin Phoenix in the new Joker movie, and much less iconically by Jared Leto in the Suicide Squad. Yeah.
Poor Jared. No, he did fine.
Yeah. He played the character.
Yeah, he's being overshadowed. And another thing, too, is whenever we watch Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix play the Joker, we're so fascinated because I think it took a lot of time and energy and work and acting methods to portray the Joker. And I'm sure it was so hard to do it. You have to be an amazing actor to really give the Joker justice, give the portrayal justice. And I think, it's because we've never known anyone really in real life who's like the Joker, or at least I haven't. And so he's not a, regular person that you kind of see on the street. Although, people can relate to him, he's just so unique. And I'm always so fascinated and impressed with these actors' abilities to portray him. And it's not easy at all.
I just rewatched The Dark Knight today before we recorded this episode. And what really blew me away about Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker is that he kind of built that out of nothing. He built this brilliant character that was inspired by the comics, but also had his own unique perspective to it and mannerisms. And he just created such a brilliant character that was so unlike anything we've ever seen before. But before we dive into discussing the Joker, I just want to say, first of all, that we first really appreciate that you're listening. We love doing this podcast, and it's a lot of fun for us. And one of the things that really motivates us and keeps us going is the fact that you all are listening. And I just want to say, if you are interested in supporting us and you want us to be able to keep going, there's a few ways you can do that. First of all, you can go on iTunes and give us a review. Second of all, you can follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook at Next Door Villain. You can send us emails. You can direct message us. We always respond. And Those are all really inspiring to us. But the most important thing that we really encourage you to do is, if you like the show, share it with your friends. Tell other people about it, spread the word, because the more people that listen, the longer that we can do this and the more villains we can ultimately end up discussing.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. And we'll start like we always do with our 30-second introductions to the character, where we compete to see who can describe the character better in 30 seconds. That's 30 seconds to jam in decades of comic book lore and various movies. It's difficult, but it's what we got to do.
It is. And we really don't prepare before it, so we're trying to punish ourselves.
Yeah. Tiana, I think you should go first this week. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so Joker has a few different types of backstories, a lot of them involving chemicals in which he kind of falls into them, or something tragic happens in his life, and then chemicals play a part in making him kind of have a white face and also kind of a Joker-like face, right? Kind of like a clown. And he is known for being pretty sadistic, doing a lot of tricks to trick Batman. Fun fact is that he's also killed Robin before, but he's a very dark person.
Nice. I think you did a pretty good job. That was great. And actually, I wanted you to go first this week because I have a surprise that I didn't tell you about beforehand. See, every week we do these competitions, and it seems like no matter how hard I try, when we go to the votes, you always beat me.
Not for last week.
All right, but most of the time you win. So
Okay.
this week I brought in a ringer. One of our fans reached out and sent us a voicemail recording of his own 30-second intro for the Joker, and I thought he could stand in for me this week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, without further ado, I give you Terrence with his 30-second intro for the Joker.
So the Joker is Batman's archenemy. He dresses like a clown, green hair, white face, red lipstick, purple suit, but he is anything but funny. He's a maniac. He's a psychopath. His one goal is to bring chaos into Gotham and to get Batman to break his one true code of killing people, so that way he knows Batman is no better than the criminals like him. Basically, he's a man who had one bad day, and after that, he just snapped. And he, too, is Batman's greatest foe.
That was good. That was really good.
Yeah, thanks for sending that in, Terrence. I think it might have been better than what I would have come up with.
It was better than mine, too. I can admit that for sure.
Well, we'll put the vote up on Instagram and Twitter, and our listeners can weigh in. And if you want to try your hand at a 30-second intro for a future episode, feel free to message us and we'll send you the details on how you can do that.
Yeah, shred me to pieces.
So I want to add just a little bit more detail to the backstory of the Joker, because this is a character that has been around for so long and has been in comic books and portrayed by various people in a number of different movies. And a lot of these villains who appear in a lot of different media, he has quite a bit of variation in the types of things that he does and his origin stories, but there are kind of some common themes that show up in a lot of the stories. So in a lot of versions, he is either a chemical plant worker or he works with chemicals in some form or another, and then ultimately chemicals get spilled on him or he falls in a chemical vat, which changes the color of his skin and hair and gives him that Joker clown-like appearance. Of course, there are other versions like in The Dark Knight and the Joker movie where he is just wearing makeup to make him look like the clown. He's also oftentimes portrayed as a failed comedian or a performer of some sort. He's had a difficult upbringing, though the details of that are a little bit in question. And it seems like he probably suffers from some kind of mental disorder, though it's unclear what that is exactly.
And to add to that, something that Terrence also said in his 30-second intro is that something bad tends to happen to him, which kind of makes him go off, kind of go into insanity, whether that be anger with his upbringing. There was one backstory through DC Comics where his wife died, and his child, his unborn child died, and it kind of made him go a little bit, like he wanted to do some crime.
Yeah. And the new Joker movie that came out last month gives him the most specific and realistic backstory of any of the stories that we've heard before. And so today we'll probably be talking quite a bit about that because it is the most detailed version of his story that we know. But we're also going to be talking about him in a broader sense and kind of pulling in from all these different stories to create kind of an amalgam of the Joker throughout the years. But it's also important to note that he's kind of an unreliable narrator. So do we really even know what his backstory is? I don't know.
And I don't think he knows either.
Yeah. In the Joker movie, he's pretty delusional. And it's clear that there are moments where he's imagining what's happening in the world and it's not actually happening. And then also in The Dark Knight, he tells, I think, 3 or 4 different versions of how his face got scarred. So it's unclear if we can really trust him.
Long story short, I think what we do know is that his life was probably not that awesome.
Yeah. Which is true for, I think, most, if not all, villains that we discuss, which is important to note because it lends evidence to the fact that if people have better lives, then they become better people. Mm-hmm. And so we should treat people better in general.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe, for that PSA.
You're welcome. As far as the Joker as a villain character, I think one of the most common themes we see is that he is an agent of chaos. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have any rules. He doesn't abide by any rules. And he doesn't care about things like money or power. He just wants to watch the world burn. He just wants to create a mess.
Yeah. And going off of that too, there's always this theme of nihilism with the Joker, and that he's kind of saying, hey, there's really no point to all of this, so I might as well just ram myself into a car and also just make things blow up to show like I'm gonna die anyway. I guess if it's today, who fucking cares? Like, you could even kill me. I don't think he's not afraid of death. He just wants to continue fighting Batman. I think he has high potential to kill Batman if he really wanted to, but he doesn't, because he loves the thrill of chaos, like you said, and showing that nothing else matters.
Mm-hmm. This was very, very apparent in the Dark Knight film. And he has this line that he says to Harvey Dent in the hospital in that film, where he says, "Do I really look like a guy with a plan? I just do things. The mob has plans. The cop have plans. They're schemers, and schemers try to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. I show schemers how pathetic their attempts to control things really are." And I thought that line does a really good job of kind of explaining his worldview. Mm-hmm. On top of that, it really stood out to me because I am a schemer. I'm someone who really likes to plan things, and I get really anxious when I'm in new situations where I don't know what's going to happen. And so for me, having a plan gives me a sense of security. Mm-hmm. And if I know what's going to happen, that means that I can be prepared for it.
Yeah, but you can have a plan, but what if it still doesn't work out? Because the world is unpredictable, it's imperfect. And you could plan all you want. What's the point? Everyone's gonna die at the finish line anyway.
Exactly. I mean, that you got kind of dark there at the end.
Sorry.
But,
I'm feeling dark for a reason. We're in Joker mode. I'm usually not this dark, but that's where my mind is going with this topic.
Yeah, well, it's a really good point because I recognize in my life that my inclination to plan can sometimes be a problem because life is unpredictable and people don't always act the way that I expect them to, which causes me some distress. Mm-hmm. And so, I wish sometimes that I could be more like the Joker in that he doesn't care about planning and he's happy and comfortable in chaos. And that's something I can kind of admire about him. And obviously I don't admire what he's chosen to do with that worldview. But just the fact that he can abandon plan and order and just live life sounds very freeing to me.
Right. He just goes out there and does whatever he wants, because being perfect and being a member of society, or trying to be a normal member of society and trying to plan, I don't think ever worked out for him. So...
No.
And I kind of relate to him in some ways in that, and again, I'm about to get pretty dark. There are days, like I'm sitting at my job at work and I'm really nervous about hitting a deadline for something and making something happen. And sometimes that gives me a lot of drive and that gives me a lot of purpose to try and do something well. But then sometimes I think, who's going to care? Or I am just in 50 years, next year, no one's going to care about it, right? Or maybe in 50 years, I'll just be retired and even if I don't hit this deadline, it's just going to be one tiny thing in a grand scheme of things. And it's, what's the point in being a functional and quote unquote good member of society when the end game is the same for everyone? And there are certain ways that I'm not going to get into that can kind of help you realize your purpose and kind of counter that argument that I'm talking about. But what I'm trying to do is say, hey, this is how I can kind of relate to the Joker in this way, because there are times when I think, why am I putting so much energy in something that, may or may not matter when, the world is unpredictable and crazy and yeah.
Yeah, well, I think you're certainly touching on something that the Joker really feels. And that is, and maybe I'm stretching what you're saying a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, is that a lot of the rules and the things that we have to do in the world are kind of arbitrary, and they are created by people in positions of power. And sometimes they can feel pointless and meaningless, ultimately, or even more harmfully. Sometimes when people who are in power create rules, they create rules that benefit themselves more than they do other people. And the people who are not benefiting from those rules can start to feel like, what is the point of following these rules?
Yeah.
Like, why should I stay in line when staying in line means getting more wealth for the wealthy people or giving more power to the people who are already in power?
And then you keep working and working and working and thinking that you're doing something that's different. And it's not. It's just they put you in that chair to work so that you partly don't deviate from society, to give you something to do. You're not bored. And then they just tell you it's meaningful when we have no idea if it really is. So then what's the point? What's the point?
Yeah. And the Joker sees chaos as the antidote for this. Right? Rules are made by people, and people tend to make rules that benefit themselves. And so as long as powerful, rich, white people are making rules, those rules are going to benefit powerful, rich, white people. I don't think that's exactly what the Joker had in mind, but, that's kind of the real world implication with what's going on today. But the Joker sees this order, these rules, he doesn't like it, and he sees chaos as the antidote because chaos is fair. Because chaos is random and affects everybody and anybody regardless of class, race, gender, whatever. It doesn't matter. And I can see the appeal of that perspective.
I can too. Totally. And chaos, like you said, it can impact the powerful and people who used to spit on you or used to force you to do things that you didn't want to do just for their benefit. And I feel like he knows that everyone gets really anxious when there is chaos, and it's a weak point for people just in general. Like if there's not order and stability, we all kind of start to lose our minds a bit and get very stressed out, especially politicians, right? And like leaders, they get very, like people are going into riots and they're doing things that are out of order. And so that's kind of his weapon, showing other people, I don't even know what he's showing, showing that nothing matters, and that they need to, I don't know, step down from their high horse or step down from their ego.
No, that's exactly it. I think it's even more targeted than what you've just laid out there, in that he believes that in chaos, with a lack of order, that people devolve to their true selves, that we put on these facades when we go out in the world because we believe that if we act a certain way, that we will get certain benefits from society, social rules, more or less. And he believes that in chaos, in difficult situations, that we drop those facades and we become our real selves and we act the way that we want, the way that we really want to. And I think that he believes that that is a more authentic way to live, that we're not lying to ourselves and to other people, and that chaos is maybe the only way to truly achieve that. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I can understand a lot of these arguments, but ultimately, I don't believe personally that chaos is the way to go to solve these problems. And I think that the Joker's logic really is kind of flawed in that true chaos is really unachievable. Certain people are always going to have advantages over others, right? Some people are strong and fit, and some people are weak and unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And because of that, chaos truly will never be fair for everyone. There are always certain people who will be more or less advantaged or disadvantaged.
Right. It's just a side comment. But I think, like, for example, Batman has a lot of advantage in wealth and tools and resources. So, like, he is in a much better place to navigate and manage that chaos. If he wasn't Batman, if Bruce Wayne weren't Batman, it probably wouldn't really affect him a whole lot. The chaos, right?
Right.
But maybe Joker, that's what kind of motivates him. He knows maybe like he's in this position of power, and so playing with the Batman and tricking him and manipulating him and killing off people that he loves and like inspiring this chaos in Batman's life is like one of the most ultimate villainous things that you can do, because he's the last person who could be affected by it.
I think that's kind of his ultimate goal in the Dark Knight, is to get the Batman to compromise his values. It's interesting, though, that the Joker, who very specifically is anti-planning and scheming, at least in the Dark Knight movie, clearly must have done a lot of it in order to accomplish what he accomplished. I mean, he orchestrates some very complicated scenarios, and then he has the gall to be like, I am not a planner.
Right.
I don't know. But so what that tells me is that either he believes in chaos so much that he thinks that a lot of planning is worth the end goal of that chaos, or perhaps there are some deeper reasons that the Joker is acting the way he is beyond just the chaos. That whether consciously or not, that there is some more purpose to the Joker's mission.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm kind of getting at?
Yeah, definitely. Because he keeps talking about chaos, and then, he has all these plans, and then you realize, oh, he tricked the Batman. I wonder how long it took him to do that. Maybe he's so impressive that he only did it in like 10, 20 minutes of scheming, but it was still scheming. And, people are contradictory in their motivations, and human beings just contradict themselves a lot. You can believe one thing, but then do the other, and yada, yada. Humans, right? We're all imperfect. And so even though the Joker shows evidence of him being nihilistic and doing all of this chaos, I think in a weird contradictory way, he's also searching for a purpose. And I think a lot of us try to search for our own purpose in life. And even in the Joker 2019 movie, you can see how he keeps kind of thinking about what his purpose is in life. Is he a comedian and a performer? Is he a good son? Is he a good person who goes to work every day and is seen as funny? Is, who is he? And you can kind of see this struggle happening where he's trying to be someone and show other people what his purpose is, but it's not working. No one really gives him the time of day to acknowledge him and his purpose in life, because everyone just kind of thinks of him as like a piece of crap on the side of the road. Like, who is this weirdo guy who laughs to himself? I don't really care if you think you're funny or not. I just don't care. And so I think, he finds his purpose in that he's going against, quote unquote, the man that treated him poorly, and he's going against Batman, and his purpose seems to end up being chaos and nihilism. And so we ask these questions like, is he going too far in establishing his purpose?
Yes.
Right. To Joe, it's very obvious, right?
Yeah, he definitely went too far.
But then again, can you blame him?
Yes.
Sorry, this is like the perfect vision right here for people who can't see Joe. Every time he says yes, he like leans into the microphone a little bit more, like Yes. It's awesome. Yeah.
Well, right, and we talk about this every episode, and we're going to talk about it in depth this episode later on, that villains are bad people and they do bad things. That's why they're villains. And we can empathize with them without necessarily believing that what they're doing is right or good. And the Joker in every form does terrible, awful things. So yeah, he definitely goes too far, but I get your point about him searching for a purpose. Mm-hmm. Particularly when we look at his backstory in the Joker movie, like you said, where he is trying to be a comedian, he's trying to be all these things. And if I kind of think about the backstory in that movie and then what we see of him as a villain in The Dark Knight, I wonder if he's lonely, if he feels like no one understands him.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any family. He's tried to be a comedian, but no one understands his jokes. But he does believe in one thing, and that's chaos. And he spends an incredible amount of effort in The Dark Knight trying to get other people to agree with him. Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe his whole chaos thing, it's not so much about chaos, but trying to prove that to himself that other people believe the same thing that he does. Because if other people believe in the things that he does, then he is no longer alone. Then he has other people to connect to.
Yeah. And I think he's also just trying to get people to see him too. Because now, when he became Joker, all like the Defense Department, Batman, all like the famous people in Gotham, everyone knows the Joker. No one knows Arthur.
Yeah.
So I can see that drive to be seen by people, be taken seriously by people, because he is, when he's the Joker, even though he's laughing, people take him damn seriously because they know what he's capable of. And I think he feeds off of that a lot too.
Well, that's, I think, something that many people can empathize with. Be like the need to be seen is just, I think, inherent part of human nature. Like if we're not seen and understood, then I don't know. It's so important to people.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, Joe.
Okay.
So you have a job, right? You're employed?
Yes, I am employed. Awesome.
And you have friends, right?
Yeah, I do now.
I am Exhibit A. No. And
yep.
And let's say you want to have this job, but then eventually, though, you get fired from your job.
Oh, boy.
And eventually, your friends kind of think you're kind of wacko, kind of weird. So they stop calling you. They stop texting you. Not sure where they went. I disappear. I'm like, screw the podcast. Screw you. I don't know.
Okay, where are you going with this question?
What would you do, Joe?
What would I do? I mean, you've described a very difficult scenario for me. I know. Certainly.
Yeah, I know it's not easy.
Yeah, if you're asking, would I take over a city and try to turn it into no, I wouldn't do that. However, would I do some things that are out of character for me? Maybe. I think it's pretty well known and established that people in desperate situations do desperate things. And that's really unfortunate, but when you're at a place in your life where you don't have any friends, you don't have a job, then you don't really have much of a connection to the world, and I might want to do something to show people that I exist and that I matter. I guess I would try to do that in a positive way. But I can understand how, if that didn't work, how it might be tempting to start to do things negatively. I certainly wouldn't do anything as bad as the Joker did, but I guess I can imagine getting to a place where I might act out just so people could see me, just so I could have a connection, even if it wasn't a positive one.
Right. Because you keep trying and trying and trying, and it's still not working. It's still not working to get people to notice you, to care about you, or to see who you are. And then it just gets really dark. And hey, some people would say you don't know what you would do until it actually happens to you.
Yeah. That was an uncomfortable question to answer. For that reason, I think, because I don't know what I would do, and it's difficult to admit that I might resort to doing something negative. And I hope that I wouldn't. Mm-hmm. But according to the Joker, people, when it really comes down to it, when they're in difficult situations and have difficult decisions to make, he believes that they'll make the selfish one. They'll make the one that matters to them more than anything else.
And I could do things too. Your friend could do negative things. We all have potential to do not so great things. But no, thank you for answering that. I know I kind of threw a curveball at you, so sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay.
I wasn't asking like in a way of trying to find out what you would do, like you. I just mean like as an example to give the audience something to think about, to ask themselves. So
yeah, to put you in that headspace a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really important to be able to do it if you're going to empathize with people. But now I want to talk about something else that is, to me, a little bit uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's this Joker movie, Joker 2019. I saw it last week, and I believe you saw it also.
Yes, I did.
And I think we both really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah, I liked it.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Acting.
Brilliant. Wow. I mean, a stunning portrayal of this character. It was captivating. And the one word that I keep coming back to when I'm trying to describe this film is shocking.
I promise I'm telling the truth. When you started saying the one word that came to my head before you said the word shocking, in my head I said shocking. I promise. I said it in my brain.
I believe you because I don't know. when the movie ended, I shuddered.
Me too.
So, first of all, we liked the film. It was brilliant in a lot of ways. It was also shocking in that I think it really tapped into some feelings that are alive in the world today that was, to me, really scary. And that feeling it tapped into was wealth and inequality, and the feeling that there are people who are rich and in power and are just getting richer and they're leaving the wealthy behind, and this wealth gap is increasing and it's becoming more and more difficult for people to lift themselves out of poverty. And so this is a frustration that I think a lot of people really understand. And the movie did a really good job, I think, of showing us the Joker's life and how he was affected by all these things. His social services were cut, and that really hurt him and affected him. And he lost his job, and so he had no more money. And we really saw him derail and commit some violence that was then viewed as almost like an act of protest, and he became a symbol for people to rise up against the wealthy. And what really scared me about that was because that was, I think, a real feeling that's alive in the world today. And it made me question why we should empathize with villain.
Yeah.
What am I getting at here?
No, I get it because, there are some ways that we can empathize with the Joker because, he's in a place of disadvantage. And you could say, he was brought up in a way that was just not good. He has no advantages in life, it seems like. But yet he does very awful, awful, awful things. And we cannot deny it. So bad. And so, why are we talking about how we can relate to the Joker when we really, in the long run, probably shouldn't idolize him? Because although we can see where he's coming from, it's still not an excuse for the things that he did, because he hurts a lot of people, and it's not good.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is that the movie taps into some very real feelings, and some feelings that I feel as well. And I worry that someone could watch this film and really connect to and relate to Arthur and want to emulate him because they see what happens in his story, and maybe they idolize him for that, and they want to put themselves down the same path because they don't see another way. And that's not okay. And we have to remember that, regardless of the pain and the hardship that he goes through, that we're going through, that those actions, that murder specifically, is not an okay means to achieve our ends. So when we empathize with villains, we don't do it because we want to idolize them. We know that villains are evil. That's why they're villains. We empathize with villains so that we can learn from them. And hopefully, the best outcome is that we find a way to help them or prevent other people from heading down the same path. Mm-hmm. So in Arthur's case, in Joker, he loses his social services because of city budget cuts. And we can see very clearly those services were one of the few things that he had in his life that were helping him to remain a sane, productive citizen. And so hopefully when we empathize with Arthur, what we can come to understand is that it was really important for him to have a strong support network. And if we understand that, then we can, when we see other people in our life who are struggling, it helps us to understand the importance of a social network for that person. And maybe it helps us to reach out to them and get them help or be there for them. You know, you can use it to recognize when people are in pain and give you the strength to stand up and offer those people support.
I agree. Because I'm sure there's people, you know, who would listen to our podcast and be like, wow, he did a lot of crappy things. Why are you like empathizing? And you just put it in a nutshell pretty clearly too. It helps us figure out what the root of the problem is and how we can prevent these things from happening. So thank you, creators of Batman, for giving us a tool, giving us examples to use. With that being said, I do want to give out, you know, a few reasons why we can still empathize with the Joker or just kind of see where he's coming from. And again, like Joe said, I don't encourage violence. We're using empathy in order to help, not to instill weird thoughts.
Yes.
But let's get controversial. I can kind of see the Joker's frustration and his need to bring about chaos and his need to kind of take down like city government and make politicians mad because they never get to the root of the problem in Gotham. Like what you said, they cut social services. They don't do anything to help with equity and to raise people up from poverty. Doesn't look like they're doing a whole lot. They just try and use their defense forces to take down the villains, but they're not getting to the root of the problem. And that's so, it's such a reflection of our world too. Some people, maybe not to the same extreme as Gotham, but they're just like, oh, we need to build a huge jail. We need to arrest all these people. And then that's like the only solution that they come up with. For example, I read something on the internet. It was a tweet where someone was like, no, I think it was on Reddit actually, where people were like, you know, if Batman used all of his money to like pour into like social services and also help people get on their feet or into education, then he probably wouldn't have to spend all that money on the Batmobile and Batgear to try and fight crime. You know, like you have to get to the root of the problem, guys.
That's so true. Not something I thought about, but every depiction of Batman I can think of in Gotham City is all focused on criminal justice. The Dark Knight specifically, like their whole thing is like the new DA is in town and he is locking up all the bad guys.
Right. That's gonna fix everything. Okay.
And the Joker, I don't agree with his methods, but he has a different one.
Right.
A different method. And so good on him for thinking outside of the box.
Right.
Bad on him for murdering a bunch of people.
Right.
But yeah, your point that Bruce Wayne has billions and billions of dollars and yet decides to spend his money doing karate out on the street at night.
Right. Come on, Bruce.
It's pretty ridiculous. It seems like he could spend his money better.
Exactly. And I think that the Joker, to me, okay, this is just interpretation. I feel that the Joker in some ways trying to tell them that. He says a quote like, smile because it confuses people, because it's easier than explaining to people what's killing you inside. And this is how I get my scars. To me, these types of quotes are like, also, you know, he could be saying them just to be like chaotic and say random things to get people to feel weird and to scare people. But in a way, he's also saying like, deep down, I'm pretty hurt. I went through a lot of shit. We're not quite sure what that shit was, but that shit could have been solved. It could have been better for him if Gotham could have delivered on certain things. And now he's an adult and he's doing all these crazy things. And I think in a way, I'm sure he blames, you know, like Gotham City for what they've done and leaving him on the side of the road, leaving him in the group of people who are disadvantaged and deserve nothing. So anywho, so I can kind of see here. He's trying to make a point. And what's the point of being good when people are upset? What's the point, Joe?
I don't know. Because being good is important, right? Social order, like we do good things, treat people well, largely because we want other people to treat us well. It's like a contract that like, I'm not going to kill you. You're not going to kill me. We agree that killing is bad for both of us, so we're not going to do it.
You can see that. But the Joker has tried everything, right? He's tried to have a job. All of these people who are rioting, they probably tried, they probably tried to be good. And for what? For what? To just be, people that the politicians say are the scum of the earth? Why? Like, now I can see how the Joker is making some kind of point in that things are not going well, and all of you rich people can finally feel something that I have felt. Despair, fear, and chaos. And yeah, anywho. Another thing, so I in no way, shape, or form encourage violence. Okay. I just need to say that one more time.
Okay.
I'm trying to give you a piece of the Joker's thoughts. I'm trying, okay? It's very hard for me to do because I do feel I am a good member of society and that I would never, ever, ever do these things. So we're just trying to figure out his brain, right? Some people would find it satisfactory to either harm or kill people they believe are corrupt, right? So like...
Yeah, we call them bad people.
We call them bad people. Exactly. And so, I can see that there could be something going on in the Joker's mind. Like, yeah, I mean, it probably does feel good to kind of stick it to the man, to make people fear for their lives. And
yeah, there's a satisfaction in getting revenge for sure. I just hope that for anyone listening, I hope that anyone ever that they don't find that killing is the way to achieve that revenge.
Right. It'll just ruin your life, man.
Yeah. Sometimes, I think this just takes a little bit of a change in thought process. But sometimes the best revenge is taking the high road and being the better person.
Kill them with kindness. I'm very good at that.
That's great. Yeah. not as satisfying, but better ultimately for everyone involved.
Yeah, don't ruin your life,
Why don't we end the episode today by talking about some real world takeaways from what we learned from our discussion about the Joker. I think this is appropriate, really, because of something.
It's appropriate because, like we said before, Gotham can be used as an extension or an example of our world today. And
I think it's definitely a proxy for our world today. Rather extreme proxy for sure.
Right.
But a lot of the issues that Gotham deals with are familiar to a lot of people, and so I think it's easy to draw real world implications. All right, what would you take away?
Where to begin? This is something that I would take away and use kind of in my everyday interactions with people, mostly like close friends, or to like look inside myself about. Basically, the Joker is really keen on showing people that people can go insane basically at any time. Even if that person is the last person on the planet that you think would kind of quote unquote crack. And he proves people right because Harvey Dent and Harley Quinn, plus himself, they all kind of cracked in a way where something bad happened to them, or they were intrigued with something, or some kind of thing in their life kind of steered them towards this maniacal way of life. And sometimes I think, like, how close am I to cracking? I'm not saying like cracking to do criminal acts, but like sometimes like I think to myself, and I don't think I'm the only one who has thought this, right? Like sometimes you think to yourself, like, what am I doing? Like I could go out and do something weird. I could go make a weird point about something. I could take down the man. I don't know. And so I kind of see where the Joker is coming from in this regard, because he's so like, people can just go insane and people can just deviate because what else is there to do? Why would you stay in this straight line of quote unquote whatever good life means, And I also think about, like, am I capable of doing bad things if something awful, like very serious and awful, happens to me? And maybe I have that capability and I just don't know it, and it's kind of freaky to me. And I think the whole point of my rambling here is is that I think we need to look inside ourselves to figure out what coping methods are best for us if something awful, very, very awful, were to happen to us, that would make us do bad things, do things that would not be good for our society. And I think, kind of going off from your comment about supporting programs in our society that can help people, I think we just need to also make sure that our friends and our family members and people around us, that if something bad happens to them or things aren't going as well as they could be, we kind of need to support them and provide a supportive group for them to go to, whatever that might mean for that situation, because anyone can really go off. And mental illness and all of that, that's very a complex thing. So I'm not trying to say that, oh, if you just have some friends, like everything will be great. It's much more complex than that. But I think maybe like a holistic approach to supporting people, whether that be with social programs, but not just that, but also having a supportive group, but also having things in place that can make sure people can do well, even when life kind of pummels them down.
All right. So I think to kind of summarize your point, I think what the core of what you're saying is the Joker shows us that people can break down when they go through traumatic experiences. Yes. Or when they are presented with difficult situations. People are fragile, they break easy, or easier than we might think. And that we should be aware of that because we might have people in our lives who are nearing their breaking point. And we ourselves might be nearing our breaking point. But if we can recognize that and we know how important those moments are, then we can respond to them and be there for them when they might need it most to prevent them from going down a dark path.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for summarizing. I think I also just have a lot of thoughts. Joker can be just so complex and fascinating too.
So Joker is like very well aware of that fragility in the face of tragedy. And he manipulates Harvey Dent that way. After Harvey loses the love of his life and gets his face burned off, instead of someone being there to support him, the Joker showed up and took advantage of him and basically pushed Harvey over the edge. Whereas what Harvey needed in that moment was a friend or someone to be there to help him along in the right direction. And instead he got the Joker.
Oh, I remember that moment too.
Turns into Two-Face.
Right. What's your takeaway, Joe?
My takeaway is just that principles matter, I think. The world is not meaningless, which is what the Joker is constantly trying to prove. But I think he ultimately fails at that because I think that people end up proving him wrong at many different points. But I think that's an easy kind of mindset to switch into when you're in a bad place, that the world is meaningless and that what's the point of all this. And so I think that it's important to remember that things do matter.
Yeah.
Even if I'm in a place where I'm like feeling like things don't, I need to remember that is like a core belief of mine. And it's a core belief that I think most people should have. You should have a strong moral compass, things that you believe that are important. And that even when you're in a bad situation, you have to try to remember not to abandon those values. And on top of that, and this is, I guess, starting to sound a lot like your point as well. Mm-hmm. If you're getting to a place where you're starting to question your values, your strongly held values, then that's probably a good indication that you're not in a good place. And so you can use that as a way to gauge when you might need help and when you might need to go reach out to someone else. So I think, I'm going to try to remember that at moments when I start to question my values, that there might be something else going on that I need to address, or a lack of something, maybe a lack of a friendship or a social connection that I need to make an effort to find rather than divulge the feeling to do wrong, I guess, or to act out.
Yeah, because things obviously do matter. Let's take the Joker where he was caring for his mom, or when he was having a job. Those all mattered. If he would have like had that job and, you know, like a good family home life or something, you know, whatever happened in his childhood, right? Those things matter. I don't know how to explain it, but like basically even the mundane things can still help you in the long run, and I think give you a sense of that purpose. And I don't think it's a lie at all. Although I said some pretty bleak things earlier, I definitely, you know, can still show you ways in which things do matter, because if they didn't, we wouldn't even be at this point in our society. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like basically things matter.
Those small things, like having his mother around to care for him and having a job and having a friend. We saw in the Joker film how significant those were, because we saw what happened to someone who lost all those things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this was a dark and serious episode about a character who is supposed to be
funny.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that he's supposed to be funny per se, but that is kind of his name. Anyways, like we said at the top of the show, we love hearing from you, and you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at nextdoorvillain. We'd really appreciate if you're enjoying the show, if you would share it with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. That's really what motivates us to keep going and keep doing this. It's something that we love to do, and it's a hobby right now, so your support really keeps us going.
Yeah, and feel free to check out the other villains that we've covered as well. Not all of them are as dark as this episode. Some are. If you look at the villain episode name, if that villain is dark by nature, that's a dark episode. If not, like it's Tammy 2 or Helga Pataki, then you can assume that they're a little bit more lighthearted. So if this wasn't your cup of tea, or maybe if it is, we have many other options too.
As always, this show was written, produced, created by us, Joe Anderson and Christiana Hennings.
Follow us. Yeah, follow us. Thank you so much for listening. I love you.
Bye.